Let's deal with a fascinating topic that has been a subject of curiosity and a debate in Islamic history. The age of Aisha, one of the Prophet Muhammad's wives, and the historical evidence surrounding her. This isn't just about her age, it's about understanding how we know and what we know, and who recorded these events. Let's dive in and let me explain. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أعوذ بالله أن أكون من الجاهلين سلام عليكم ومن الناس من يشتري لو الحديث. End of the people is he who buys the amusement of hadith or diversion of hadith لِيُلِلَّ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, to mislead the way of Allah, بِغَيْرِ ilm, without knowledge, وَيَتَّخِذَهَا هُزُوًا, and who takes it in ridicules. أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ مُهِينٌ, those will have humiliating punishment. You know those hadith, what you follow, what you think highly of, those hadiths keeping you away from the book of Allah. That's lahw al-hadith. You are too busy focusing on those hadiths, you have no time for the Quran. But you have time for the Quran only to recite like a parrot. Now, we are not going to be talking about that. Let's talk about Aisha. Let's talk about age of Aisha, the time of her marriage. Most people know the commonly quoted hadith that Aisha was married at 6 and engaged at 6 and marriage consummated at 9, and this is everybody knows. This narration comes from Sahihain, Sahih al-Bukhari and al-Muslim, two of the most trusted collection of hadith. That's what most people believes. But there is a major problem here. Historical evidence shows contradictions, especially when we look at the timeline of Aisha's life in comparison to her sister Asma. Also, it's contradicting the Quran. Oh yeah, I forgot. You don't care if it's contradicting the Quran. You don't follow the Quran. Sorry. But whoever follows the Quran, whoever fear Allah, this video is for that person. Just to educate. The hadith goes that the Prophet married her when she was 6 years old, and he consummated his marriage when she was 9 years old. Hisham said, I have been informed that Aisha remained with the Prophet for 9 years. That means until death of Prophet. So now here already there is a problem with that 9 years she lived with the Prophet, right? There's a contradiction. If you want to know the contradiction, that she did not live, maybe she lived with the Prophet for 7 years or 8 years or maybe 11 years, but not 9. You can check that the contradiction of Prophet's age in my video up there somewhere or the description below. Now the contradiction is and this one also a contradiction, but also the main contradiction is not this. Aisha had an older sister named Asma. Historians widely agree that Asma was around 10 years older than Aisha. You get that? 10 years older than Aisha. Now here's where it gets interesting. Many historical sources recorded that Asma was born 27 years before Hijrah, which was the migration of Muslims from Mecca to Medina. This everyone will agree. This means Asma was about 100 years old when she passed away. If we do the math right, mathematics, not the other math, if we do the math right on these sources, Aisha would actually have been around 18 or 19 years old at the time of her marriage, not 9. This conflicts with the Hadith, Sahihain, that it says 6 years and 9 years, conflict with that. Do I care? I don't. But I'm just informing you. I'm trying to educate you on the Sahihain, which nobody like to criticize. I am criticizing. That's all. This age gap of a decade suggests that Aisha may have been much older than commonly accepted narrative. Now let's look at a major contradiction. The Aisha's age is very important and crucial. Why? It is because it's an insult to the Prophet, to my beloved Prophet. Now, why that is it is accusing my Prophet, my beloved Prophet, those munafiqs of the past, Bukhari and all those munafiqs of the past, all those shaitans are insulted my beloved Prophet and accused my Prophet, saying he violated the Quran. That's what it means. When you people are trying to focus on the age, but you are ignoring the most important fact that it's not accepted in the Quran. Quran says, وَابْتَلَعُوا الْيَتَامَى حَتَّى إِذَا بَلَغُوا النِّقَاحَ, and test the orphans until they reach marriageable age. Now, what is a marriageable age? 6-year-old child is a marriageable age. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who have believed, La yahillu lakum an tarithu nisaa qarha. It is not lawful for you to inherit women by compulsion. Now, two things you have to focus. One, it says nisa, not a child. It doesn't say a child. It says nisa. And also compulsion. For child, it cannot say, I like to marry this 50-year-old man. I like to marry this 18-year-old man. I like to marry this 30-year-old man. A 6-year-old child doesn't know to say. And a 6-year-old child is not nisa, as an older woman, right? But if you say nisa doesn't, it means it applies to all women, little or older. That's fine. But it says compulsion. So now think about it. Do you think Rasulullah would have married a child? Is there a possibility when the Quran ayahs are saying this? You know, most of the people I see on YouTube, they are arguing, yeah, even in these days in US and other countries, you can marry a child, a 10-year-old, 11-year-old child, a 9-year-old child is all accepted, even according to United States or any other countries. And you say that. But Islam is perfect. Religion of Allah is perfect. How in the bloody world you assume that Allah allowed this? Just imagine, just think about it. Islam has to be an example to the whole of humanity. How in the bloody world you think, according to Islam, this is accepted? In so many Muslim countries, they still let the child marriage. Child marriage is unaccepted. It is not authorized by the Quran. It is not. Prophet did not marry a child. Those pedophile-minded imams of yours, they invented these things. to allow this, to justify their pedophile mind, pedophile behaviors. They should be put to death if they are living now. No, it's not acceptable. According to the Quran, this is not acceptable. Prophet did not do it. This was a lie. Now, if you agree that Prophet married a 6-year-old child, think about it. Do you have daughter or child? I don't have daughter. I don't have children. If I have a daughter, do you think I would be fine with a 50-year-old man to marry my child? No, not even 10, not even 9, not even 19. No, I won't be fine with it. It's a child, for God's sake. A child. Get that into your dumb brain of yours. Get it through. It's unacceptable. Seriously. This drives me crazy. If people says Prophet married Aisha when she was 9, it wanted me to punch their face out. Stupid. Stupid. Man yastri alaw al-hadithi بغير ilm, without knowledge. So why is there this contradiction? To understand that, let's take a look where these narrations about Aisha come from. Islamic history, especially in the early years, was preserved primarily through oral tradition, stories passed down by words of mouth before being compiled in writing form. But these written compilations didn't happen until over centuries after the events they describe. Here is the key point. Most of what we know about Aisha's life was written down by historians with Persian backgrounds or cultural influences, and this could have affected their recordings. Let's take a closer look at 3 influential figures, historians: Ibn Ishaq, Al-Tabari, and Al-Waqidi. First up, Ibn Ishaq. He was one of the earliest biographers of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He was born in Medina but had Persian ancestry and came from a family with cultural ties to the Persian world. His grandfather was reportedly a Zoroastrian who converted to Islam, which was quite common as Islam spread into regions influenced by Zoroastrianism. Ibn Ishaq's most famous work, the Seerah, collected stories of the Prophet's life, but he compiled more than a century after Prophet's passing. Because of the Persian background and cultural influences, some scholars believe that Ibn Ishaq's work may reflect Zoroastrian or other Persian cultural elements. Even in my video on Isra wal-Mi'raj, contradiction, you can see that. In fact, Ibn Ishaq's collection was later modified. Why I say modified, not edited? Because it was not recorded, it was not written, it was oral. Even Ibn Ishaq's was oral record. I don't know how, which cassette tape or which MP3 player they used to record it. I have no idea. And passed down through Ibn-Hisham, which adds even more distance from the original event. Then there is Al-Tabari, another critical figure in Islamic history. He was born in Tabaristan, not Kabristan, Tabaristan in Persia, and is considered one of the most prominent Islamic historian. Most prominent. Can you believe that? Most prominent Islamic historian. At-Tabari's work, the Tariq al-Tabari, or History of the Prophets and Kings, was a monumental effort to compile Islamic history. But he also relied on oral narrations passed down over generations like Ibn Ishaq. Al-Tabari came from a region and family background with a strong Zoroastrian influences. And he grew up in a Persian cultural setting before embracing Islam. This Zoroastrian influence can shape interpretations and storytelling, as the Persian culture valued elaborate storytelling, often blending history with myth and moral lesson. In قابل है अजब में गुजरात. So, while At-Tabari is a highly respected historian, his cultural background could have influenced the way stories were recorded and presented. And lastly, we have Al-Waqidi, a historian from Medina, who lived about a century after the Prophet. Al-Waqidi's work contributed greatly to early Islamic history. But like others, he relied on narrations from people around him and was influenced by the cultural milieu of his time. While Al-Waqidi was born in an Arab environment, he worked under the Abbasid Caliphate, which was known for blending Arab and Persian influences, especially in Baghdad. His works were even criticized by some later scholars who argue that Al-Waqidi's accounts may have included embellishments and inaccuracies. His role as a court historian meant that he sometimes tailored his work to the expectations of his patrons. Now, why does all of this matter? It's because Persia and its culture had a huge influence on early Islamic scholarship. Zoroastrian traditions, which emphasize a cosmic struggle between good and evil, had a lasting impact on Islamic thinkers. Many Islamic scholars and historians in the Abbasid period came from former Zoroastrian families, Zoroastrian religion, which means that the way stories were recorded could carry influences from these cultural values. When you are reading the Hadith today or history, when you compare that with the Quran, you would clearly see that Zoroastrianism is lurking inside. It is inside your Hadith and history. I know this doesn't make their work unreliable at all, but it does remind us to question how cultural perspective might color historical accounts. But for me, Hadith or Islamic history, both are Lahwal Hadith. Now, if the Quran calls itself a book, Kitabun, and mention writing, why do we rely heavily on oral tradition, oral narrations? Why? Does it make sense? The Quran was preserved in writing form from the beginning. You can watch my video on that subject. I'll put it here or in the description below. Also, which shows that early Muslims value documentations. For instance, in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who have believed, إِذَا تَدَايَنْتُمْ بِذَاتٍ إِلَىٰ أَجَلٍ مُسَمَّى. When you have contracted a debt for a specified term, فَاكْتُبُهُ, write it down. فَاكْتُبُهُ, write it down. This reference to writing implies that recording things were known and valued even at that time. So you cannot tell me, no, it's oral tradition. I have already have a video on about that. the written Quran, you go watch it. I have already dealt with it. But there is no this oral tradition business. So my question is, so why didn't early Muslims write down most important events or details about Aisha's life if they had the means, right? It's because this is يَسْتَرِي عَلَى الْحَدِيثِ بِغَيْرِ علم. So what does this all mean? Well, with discrepancies in Aisha's age and the lack of contemporary records and the strong Persian influences on the early Islamic histories, we have to acknowledge that there are gaps in what we can know for sure. Historians like Al-Waqidi, Ibn-Hisham, Al-Tabari shaped much of what we know today. But they were collecting stories in a time and place heavily influenced by Persian cultures and Zoroastrianism. Ultimately, the existence of Aisha as a historical figure depends largely on faith in the narrations, not on a solid contemporaneous evidence at all. This whole oral tradition business was to fool people. If you are thumb sucking on that, that's your ignorance. Don't blame me. That's your ignorance. I absolutely don't have to believe in that at all. Allah created me with capacity to think and judge. So I don't believe a person called Aisha existed at all. Believing in Aisha is like believing in unicorn, dragons, Harry Potter, Cinderella, and other fantasy stories. It's good to read, good to watch in movies, that's about it. It's not going to bring value to the deen of Allah at all. At all. But unfortunately for you, that you based your entire religion on blind faith, entire dogma on blind faith, entire religion, Islam, brand religion, or rabbinical religion, as I call it, rabbinical religion is based on blind faith. Aisha is purely a belief, as if you are believing in unicorn. No acceptable proof at all. Your ulamas can say, no, it is there, it is there, it is true, it is true, it is true, it is true, we believe it, we believe it. Your ulamas can say as much as they want, or even they might want to call me kafir. I don't care. I don't believe it. Hello, I don't believe it. يَسْتَرِي لَهُ الْحَدِيثِ بِغَيْرِ علم. I am buying what you are selling. Isa never existed in my book. Sorry, when I was a kid, I used to believe in all those, even unicorn. Yes, Harry Potter, maybe. Yeah, I don't remember reading Harry Potter, but similar to all those, I used to believe in all those. But I am way too old for the fantasies. I watch fantasy movies. The movies, they are good. But to believe, I'm too old. I'm way too old for the fantasies. Aisha was a fantasy story for those who are pedophiles who wanted to marry children. That's why they invented that. Other than that, it's not true. Khalas. Throw it. Trash it. Now, sorry if I hurt anybody's feelings. I say you in talking so that I'm talking to the camera. It's much easier to communicate. If I say they, it's like I'm gossiping, right? So that's why I'm talking as in you. I'm not insulting any of you. I love you all. So I'm not insulting you. I want everybody to enter Jannah. I want everybody to be in peace. I want everybody to be enlightened. I want everyone to follow the Book of Allah as Allah wanted. I want everyone to worship Allah as Allah wanted you to worship. That's all it is. I love you all. Salamun alaikum. Peace.